Let's take a journey down the rabbit hole in starting with the Bob Lazar story and seeing where it takes us in terms of, is there an ET presence on the planet and what are they doing with mankind? What's the intention and what's happening to us? I'm joined again with the great Daz Smith. How are you, Daz?
Yeah, doing fine, and you?
Pretty good. I'm excited for part two of our discussion. We just finished our Bob Lazar talk. We decided to cut this up into two parts: the data and the reviews of everything going on, and then this episode is going to be more about the woo on the Future Forecast podcast. Again, this is episode two of it. So I want to start. We just recapped all the Bob Lazar stuff. We had this great conversation, and we kept just flirting with all those other, extraneous concepts that were out there. And I want to start out this morning before we got online. You posted a video from 1989 of Bob Lazar, and he was talking about, was it a document he revealed or someone said something to him
Yeah,
about how these beings view us as containers?
yeah.
And we've heard that before. Who was the guy? He had no fingers. He claimed he was in a gunfight with aliens. He talked about that too, didn't he? Do you
Oh,
remember who I'm talking about? I used to see him on YouTube all the time.
was it Phil Schneider, was it? No?
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know how much I ever believed his story just because the things he said didn't sound
Yeah,
accurate to me.
yeah.
But it was
Some of that early stuff was interesting, but you don't know where, you don't know the credibility to back those stories up. But yeah, he said
right.
some of their stuff. Yeah.
So first of all, is that, do you think that videotape of Lazar from '89 talking about containers, is that legit? I've never heard that before. I never heard Bob Lazar say that.
That is from he did bring out a tape in
Okay.
1989 of, I think it's called the Lazar tape, and you can
Okay.
find bits of it on YouTube. So yeah, that is real. If I remember correctly, I think he said that he didn't get shown aliens, but I think he was shown a document that detailed
Okay.
some of their history and
Yeah.
so what they were doing here on the planet and that kind of stuff. So I think he was quoting, from what he read more than what he experienced.
Yeah. It did sound like it wasn't a direct experience that he had, that he
Yes.
was giving
Yes.
given that information.
But he's not alone. As we know, there are other people that say this. I think even science. I'm not an advocate of Scientology. I don't know it too much, but in the early 70s, I think they also believed that there was this container element involved with,
Yeah.
with humans and souls and stuff.
And I want to give a caveat. And for those of you watching, please put yourself in the mind space. I'm not one to try to spread fear and scary stuff. I think this is an interesting concept when it comes to UFO discussion that's worth exploring. But I think we need to be very careful before we just jump on and say, this is definitely happening. Let's be afraid and the world is ending and all that stuff. Because I have to give the caveat, we have a lot of untapped power. I think as intuitives, as psychics, I think we know that there's a lot of good that can be done. And please, Dad, help me remember. I want to talk about the power of manifesting, not in a woo-woo spiritual love and
Mhm.
light kind of way, but just how I think consciousness impacts our
Yeah.
ability to manifest things, which is a positive takeaway from this. So please, if we get into some dark stuff, I want you to keep that in mind and don't let yourself get trapped into the darkness of some of the potential in these conversations. But with that being said, he says containers. Dad, in your opinion, containers for what?
I think he means containers for souls.
Okay.
Um, and that seems to be a popular kind of topic that's online at the
Right.
moment. Yeah, I think Courtney Brown's Farsight group have been exploring that. Um, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me in a way anyway, because we have the alleged reincarnation things that people say they go through and stuff. So
Yeah.
the human bodies might just be containers for recycling of souls for all we know.
What purpose? What purpose do we serve then as a human? If we're separating us, and is a soul the same as consciousness? Do you think, or is it something different?
Uh, I think it's I think it's just different names for the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. So
So
it's
some
it's
kind
it's our
of
seed of consciousness then, which
yeah,
is a
our
soul.
consciousness, our energy, everything
Yeah.
that makes us what we are without a physical body. But I think all the experiences of having a physical body are probably in there as well. Yeah.
What what purpose do you think? And we're totally making this up as we go now, but based on our research and experience, why the body? Why the need for a container?
I don't know. I mean, from stuff that I've done in my own studies, my own experiences of psychic kind of like conversations and stuff.
Right.
It's for the aim of us experiencing and learning,
Yeah.
to gain the higher knowledge about ourselves. You have to do that through experience, and the easiest way to do it is through physical experience.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's probably, if all this is real, there's probably more to it than that. In that our souls or our essence, whatever you want to call it, they might be able to be reincarnated or transferred to other containers that aren't human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not even on Earth, maybe anywhere in the known or unknown universe, kind of thing, on many different levels.
What's interesting in Bob Monroe's book, for those who aren't familiar with Bob Monroe, the founder of the Monroe Institute, he developed a technology and a practice to create the right conditions for an out-of-body experience. He put 3 books out. They're fascinating books about just his journeys and exploring of the universe out there in the psychic ether. And in his middle book, which ties into some of the scary stuff, called Far Journeys, he went ahead in time, I think 3,000 years, or to the year 3000, um, where he encountered human life forms, and they were able to come in and out of their bodies at will, but they also were able to jump into the bodies of animals. And the purpose of it was to have an experience,
Yeah.
to create what he called Loosh. And he has this portion in his book where he talks about, it's the Garden of Eden story, but it's from a lens of, life was created to produce Loosh, which is an energy source based on emotion. And the 2 most desirable, strongest, purest forms of Loosh come from fear and from loneliness. So when you think about that, and the life that we live, and you can get into all your concepts of God and control and all that stuff, like, if you're all powerful, why is life in these conditions on this planet? And from that lens, it was to create Loosh. Anyway, he goes into the future, and consciousness is transferring, to these different animals. But he also said, we understand it now, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So I want to give that caveat, because the stuff seems really scary, and maybe that's because we don't understand the greater purpose of it. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
It's very possible, isn't it? I It's not something I fully looked into. I've kind of, like, over my years of travels of doing the psychic stuff, I kind of bounced into some of this stuff, and I had conversations with
Yeah.
non-human life forms about it. Um, it's not something I've felt personally that I wanted to really look into, and I don't know if there might be a fear in that of not wanting to know what's going on. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, it does seem to be something happening, because I can't otherwise quantify what's happening with the alleged reincarnation stuff, if that is actually happening, of course. But it does seem like we are separate. Our essence is separate from our physical body, and that I
Yeah.
do believe that in some format it does continue after death in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know about the container thing, though. I have to be honest. And or why, and why that would involve the alleged aliens or non-humans. To what degree are they using it? Is it a food source? Is it an energy source? I don't
Right.
know. I mean, it's all concepts that have been covered in popular culture, like the Matrix is. It's
Right.
pretty much that. The humans are containers and energy sources.
Right. And they pulled on sources from this, obviously, when they were writing
Yeah,
that script,
yeah,
which in my opinion then reinforces these ideas. And we'll get to this later, but if you think about the power of consciousness, the magic of Hollywood that Jordan Maxwell used to talk about, um, you know, if our consciousness has the power to manifest, then the stronger the signal, I would assume, the stronger the manifestation of
yeah,
whatever you're trying to bring into existence or reality.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's interesting, if you think of consciousness as data sets, right?
Mhm.
And a container as a hard drive, or
Yeah,
physical storage, right? I'm always reminded of Carla Turner's work in her last book, Masquerade of Angels. And she was talking about a man that was abducted repeatedly. And at one point, she said they took his consciousness out of his body and put him into a black box.
yeah,
And he was terrified. And then they put him into a different body that looked identical to the other one, but it was a cloned body. So they were
yeah,
able to transfer consciousness from one piece to the other. Um, it, Back then in the 80s, that made no sense. I mean, I read it, probably early
yeah,
2000s. It still made
yeah,
no sense to me. now that I understand, I can take a flash drive, a USB flash drive, and put information on it, and then plug it somewhere else, and that whole software just appears on my screen again.
Yes, yeah.
Are we dealing with something as simple as that? Now we're just starting to get the technical understanding behind it.
It's very, I mean, from what we're hearing, or we're finding out through rumors, myths, and whatever else is coming out, that seems like it's highly possible. That seems to be what is coming out or emerging from some of the abductees and the UFO field. And now, Bob Lazar and other people have said it over the last,
Yeah.
20 or 30 years as well. That they do have this technology where they can move souls and transport them into other bodies and things.
I spoke with some people that were connected to the Monroe Institute years ago, and one friend, she would leave her body and she'd go into almost like a different reality and occupy another body and have that experience of consciousness. And I've had 2 or 3 experiences. I know this sounds kind of woo stuff here, but that's what we're doing. We're doing woo stuff.
Yep.
Where I'm asleep and I have this experience where you wake up and you're like, no, I was somewhere else. This was a real encounter. Joe Rogan had a guy on his podcast who took some kind of hallucinogenic, and he said he was gone for 6 months on a 15-second trip. And he lived another life. So is this possible that we are able to just transpose into other bodies and have an experience?
I think it's very possible, and I think it's reflected in in our common stories and myths of heaven and hell and
Right.
all that purgatory, all that kind of stuff as well.
And
It would be shocking though to know that it might be possible that other life forms have a technology to control that, and it's not a natural process.
yeah. Well, and then that goes into, who was it? It was Robert Morning Sky. If you've ever watched he's got like a 4-hour presentation you can still find online. And he talked about, it was like a memory wipe machine that your soul goes through. He says, stay away from the light, because what that does is it puts you back into the system. And again, this was in the 80s when he was talking about this. And it's like, what kind of, but he's just talking about this advanced tech that put you through that process. Really great story. If you haven't watched that video, I recommend those of you watching go find it.
And I think it's all probably helped and bolstered a little bit as well by all the tales of near-death experiences as well, because clearly the consciousness is existing outside the body in some regard, and those people are talking about having communications with other non-physicals, and some of them have actually said it's seconds or minutes that happens on the ground in real time, but they're away for months and years in this alternate reality.
It's amazing. And again, time back to Monroe. I mean, I forget which phase it is. They got different states of consciousness that they've mapped out, and one of them is it's no time. So you can feel like you're gone for a very long time, and just minutes have passed by. In physical reality. So we don't understand, I think, so much right now.
No, absolutely.
In terms of kind of what we are. I think that's our first question. What are we? In understanding of him, what are we going to become? And how are we being used?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we started talking about abductions in our last conversation. Why aren't we talking about it publicly when we're acknowledging that UAPs exist? What's the reason behind that? Are these people all lying? Are they all insane? Or is there something else to it?
It's an interesting one, that, in that I have seen, because I'm in quite a few of the UAP kind of like talking groups and stuff with some of the people that are, heavily involved in the disclosures. And I would say the majority of people in there that have had a UAP experience have and even remote viewers have had some kind of possible interaction or abduction experience. But no one in public, when they're talking on the UAP circuit, when we're talking about Congress and we're talking about newspapers and media, no one whatsoever is mentioning abductions. And I think I've seen it. I've seen it talked about that is on purpose. That is like it's a step too far at this stage. But at the same time, there might be a darker meaning behind all that. There might be a plan for us to not talk about it, because we're also not talking about the mutilations, the cattle mutilations.
Right.
You're
right.
That hasn't come up once either.
And that's well documented by Linda Moulton Howe. Like
Yeah,
she's a accredited journalist, excellent researcher, and like that's how she got into all of this by doing real journalism and reporting on the facts of the things that she was finding. I mean, that's
yeah.
well documented. Why don't we talk about that either?
I think possibly, and I'm speculating here, that there probably is a darker agenda going on, that people aren't ready to talk about or accept. I mean, in some of the UFO forays we've done with remote viewing, I've kind of been told that the Earth is almost like a farm,
Uh-huh.
and the entities out there are the farmers, and we are the farm animals.
Yep.
Um, and because we are sentient beings, we don't like to feel or think of ourselves as being a farmed animal and not being at the top of the
The food
ecological
chain.
ladder. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you
it's
really stop and think about that.
it's tough to think of yourself as a cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Unless you reach some sort of spiritual enlightenment and peace with that possibility. But
yeah,
it all depends on the method and manner in which you're being used. I mean, you have happy cows who are free range grazing and they're not aware of it until the very end. And you have the others that are factory farm that are just in cages their whole life. And, you know, where are we? What, is there something better for us?
absolutely. And it's good questions to ask. But you're right, no one is talking about it. But I think that's on purpose because it's almost like, okay, let's not jump the gun. That's a step. Let's let's get recognition that this stuff's real first, and
Right.
then let's deal with the actual harsher consequences of that a bit more down the road. I think
Now,
it's purposely not being discussed because it's like if they discussed it now, everyone would freak out before they would want to actually find out that it's real or not.
how are they being, in your opinion, how is this narrative being sold that these things are threats or are they possibly benevolent, friendly things?
That's a good question. There are some people out there um, that claim to do remote viewing and stuff that are proposing that every non-human interaction is with a being that has our best intentions at heart.
I don't
Um,
understand.
yeah,
I don't see
I
how you
don't
can say
understand that.
everything like
Yeah,
that.
that might be happening. I think again, it's like what we talked about earlier. I think it's like a scale. I think there
Uh-huh.
might be some interactions that want the best for us as human
Right.
beings, to develop spiritually, all that kind of stuff. I also believe that like the way the rest of the universe kind of works and the way we work with animals and things on this planet. Um, we farm things and we think of other life
Right.
forms as being below us and that we can
Right.
do what we want with and experiment on how we want. I think
Right.
other beings out there that are more intelligent than us might see us along that line that we are theirs to do with as they see fit, and maybe they are experimenting with us in some way or developing us.
I think that's a safe assumption. I mean, as above, so below, right?
Yeah,
Why would the pattern change?
absolutely. Yeah,
Why would it be different? And maybe you reach a certain level of intelligence and you reach this higher level of spiritual enlightenment.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, maybe you still need some kind of energy, some kind of test subject, some kind of food
yeah.
source until you reach a certain level.
That seems to be. I mean, I can't see that's what's happening with the mutilations. But
Right.
with the abductions, it does seem to have different scenarios. There does seem to be a hybridization effort going on,
Yes.
making part them, part us in some way for a future kind of development. But there does seem to be, and this goes back eons, some kind of element of abductions that does seem to be a bit like how we treat cattle, some kind of
Yeah.
genetic kind of testing, get organs, get bits and pieces from us as in a cattle type scenario. They are taking people from their beds and from whatever situations, doing what they want, almost like intruding within the body and then
Yep.
wiping the memories in some way. I can't. I mean, that's almost like acting. I don't want to say it's nefarious because it could just be as benign as when a vet does something, when your
Correct.
vet does an operation on your dog, they
Right.
knock your dog out, they do the operation, then you wake the dog back up at your house kind of thing, and hopefully he hasn't no
He doesn't
recollection.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's they're not wanting to harm the life form that is being done upon, but at the same time, there is a harmful effect that you can't deny from that. And I think that's probably what's happening to us with the abduction scenario in some way.
There's so much to that. I want to point out, you and I are like in sync today. There's been about 10 different points through our last two conversations where you've taken the thought right out of my head and said it out loud. So this is a good discussion here, Dad. We're on the same wavelength. I want to talk about hybridization, but I also want to come back to the abduction thing and the memory wipes and really just that sense of manipulation. It's scary and it's challenging, especially when you start to get these memories that come through.
Yeah.
But the other piece of that is, for those of us that have gone through that, for those of us that are involved in that, look at the growth that comes from that. It's hard and it's scary, but
Growth
look
for
how
some,
for
yeah.
some, yeah,
A lot of people
uh,
are very badly damaged from it mentally.
yeah, yeah. You're right. That is true. I know, in my experience, having woken up and going, "Oh, that was really strange." I mean, it's driven me to try to
Yeah.
figure things out. But yeah,
Because
there
I
are
did a
people
lot
who,
of, I have done a lot of research over the years, met abductees, talked to them, took their sketches, all kinds of stuff. Uh, and I would say it's like a 50-50. 50% of them, do get a spiritual kind of growth from what happened to
right?
them. But there is an element that I have met, and even some of the people I'm talking to this very day are
Yeah,
very emotionally and mentally scarred and damaged by these experiences as well.
yeah, yeah. I'd be curious to know more in terms of, is that unintended? Is, what's the overall intention? Or
Yeah.
is this just a natural byproduct of whatever they're doing, unrelated? Oh, you happen to grow spiritually, great, but that wasn't our intention here at all.
Yes.
We
It's a
just
hard
don't
one.
know.
Again, we do try to see things in black and white, and I think that maybe all those scenarios might be happening at the same time
Yes, it's all possible.
with different
Um,
beings with different agendas.
right, which makes it very
Very
confusing. It's not like
complicated.
there's just this one group here that's possibly
Yeah,
interacting with
which
people.
is scary in its own right, because if that's true, and there are hundreds of different beings doing hundreds of different things with us with
Right.
agendas, it's literally a lottery of if you get a good one or a bad one.
Yes. Yes. Or a combination. I mean, I've had a
Yeah,
variety of
yeah,
different experiences throughout my life.
yeah,
Thinking about what their intentions are, and I have my own bias here. You mentioned hybridization. I mean, there's some, Dr. Jacobs has some really interesting work
yeah.
about that. What are your thoughts on hybridization?
I think that's definitely occurring. From the books that I've read, and I read quite a few. Going back a few years now, I think it was the Betty Andreasson affair. Books called The Watchers, I think it is, by Ray Fowler or something. 1 and 2. She did some. I mean, her books were amazing because she was an abductee, but she actually remembered what happened to her, and she actually drew really detailed sketches of every stage of what they did when they abducted her, and she
Uh-huh.
details how they can make themselves semi-transparent to float through walls.
Yeah.
And then she details how they took her eggs, they mixed her eggs. They introduced a hybrid baby to her so that the
Yeah.
baby had a feeling and an inclination what it was like to get feelings and emotions from a human being,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So I truly believe that kind of thing is going on at some level. I don't know to what aim, why, or anything, but I'm also convinced that our human race has been manipulated since the dawn of time as well.
Yes. And if that thread is true, if our race has been manipulated, then who's to say this isn't just the next stage of evolution? I think
Yes.
Dr. Jacobs' work, I think it talks more about like this as a takeover,
Mm.
but it could very well be emerging.
Yes.
And what's interesting is he talks about the different changes in these hybrids that you see, because in his book he talks about um, regular Earth humans or people here on Earth encountering these hybrids and then having
Yep.
to train them in basic things like how to buy groceries, how to use a stove, how to live in apartments. And he's got all these just really random stories, how they show up one night and they take them out and teach them how to drive a car.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to integrate into society.
Oh
And
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
when you hear the accounts of the descriptions of these beings and how they function, they're socially unaware.
Mm.
They're emotionally unintelligent. And I'm going to be careful how I word this. There was a researcher who talked about certain conditions, neurological conditions that exist today that sound very much the way these hybrids have been described.
Yeah. Things like ADHD and attention disorders, that kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, that's not the one, but yes,
Yeah,
I don't want to say just because
yeah,
I don't want to be offensive.
sure, yeah, absolutely,
Especially I work
yes,
in special education too, so I don't want to. I really don't. My intent isn't to offend. I'm just trying to connect pieces here.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
and it's a whole lot of possibility. I mean, we've heard people like Bob Bigelow and even Ingo Swann, and so many people over the years talk about how they've encountered non-human physical people living amongst us on the
right.
planet here. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a very very true possibility that that kind of thing's going on a day-to-day basis.
And why are they here? And you always get the thread of, well, they're preparing you for a disaster because these people in the hybrid stories are talking about, well, they're training me to do this, so when people are confused in
Yeah,
the cataclysms, I can escort them. Oh,
there does
what
seem
do you
to be an
think?
element of that. It's not. I don't think. Again, I think you know it's a spectrum, but
Yeah,
there that does seem to be an element involving some of the experiences. Um, I don't know. For we hear so many different stories, and we have to be honest. The Earth is very rich in minerals and resources
right, right.
in the local neighborhood. So it might just be like a
It's a
like
hotspot.
yeah, a shopping store. This might be
Yeah.
the local mini mart for
Hopefully, we're not what's on the
yeah,
menu there, as
yeah.
we talked
Hopefully,
about
we're not on the
earlier.
shelves, but we
Yeah,
do know that we, in some cases, we us and our other animals might be on the shelves. Because we have to be honest here, there are reported cases of human mutilations and as well as cattle mutilations.
yeah, yeah.
There are. If you do a deep dive and you search, you will be able on the internet find the pictures of the Brazilian human mutilations.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of Fire in the Sky too. Why is his name escaping me now? Travis Walton, right?
Yep.
Is it Walton
Yep.
Walker? Um, he said when he first woke up, he was in some kind of cocoon, and there was
Mm.
decomposing human bodies in there,
Yep.
based on the experiments that were being done on them.
Yeah, and we know there are around the planet there are millions of people that go missing every year that are never seen again.
Didn't we work a missing 411 target years
We
ago,
did,
Daz?
we did, yes. It was one of the top ones. I can't remember the guy's name, Jared something or other.
Yeah,
One of the yes, and we did have some very interesting possible UAP type data that
right.
was involved in that as well at the time.
And I don't think it was good, right? I don't want to speculate, but I don't think
No, because
it was scary.
the child. I think some of the remains of the child were found
That's right.
quite some time later. Yes.
Yeah. And again, it's RV data.
Yes.
So take that as just one piece of the
Yes. So,
investigation. But
it's like everything we talk about, really. It's we don't know what's going on, and we're getting mixed messages of spiritual goodness. A lot of people getting
right,
real good spiritual kicks, journeys, life experiences like this. But there are also reports of, the darker side of things with mutilations, mental kind of problems, all that kind of stuff. And as we
right.
discussed, it might be that there are so many different scenarios going on that they're at cross threads to each other. It's very hard to get a real kind of grasp on what exactly is going on with all these.
Yeah. And I wonder how much power and control do we have, or are we capable of having in these situations?
That is a very good question. Something
Are
I
we powerless, or
No, I think we are very integral to this.
yeah,
So we have to be very careful on our state of mind.
yes.
And I think the more you believe in something and think about something along those kind of lines, the more you make it a reality.
Exactly. And that's why I gave that caveat in the beginning of listen to this information, but
Yeah.
don't make it your reality. And I'll say from personal experience, I used to suffer from sleep paralysis, and the shadow figures used to show up all the time. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely horrible for me, all the way up through my 20s. And when I finally learned how to meditate and ground myself and release that fear, my experience has changed.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. So I do believe that we have the capability, based on how in control we are of our emotional state and our minds and our thoughts, as to the level of manipulation that happens.
Yeah.
And then I think
Absolutely.
we can also recognize incoming signals. I mean, for those of you that are the empathic, you recognize when someone just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Do you take action on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You should always follow your gut instinct and gut feelings on anything along these lines, really.
Yeah. And I think that's very important in recognizing your power and doing that inner work and trying to understand these things before you just get caught up in the fear, because it's possible. Again, that's what's the news. It's always, we talk about this with the world event sessions, right?
Yep.
We're
Yep.
always going to get negative. I try to give that caveat. It's going to be negative. It's going to be scary. It's going to be dark, because that's what's always put out there, because that's what
Yes.
sells.
Yeah.
That's an addicting frequency once you get
It
into
is.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. You start honing in on it more than anything else. But it's not. I don't want to be all negative with this. It's because I've had, I have spent some time communicating with these life forms in the past,
right,
through circle group type meditation work.
right.
And I did have some scary experiences, but I also had just as equal, really spiritual, nice experiences.
Any
So,
that you can share, Daz?
um, just trying to think of some really. I, I mean, I did write a book on it. So the easiest thing is for people to read the book. Really, it's called "Surfing the Psychic Internet,"
Okay, is that on
and
Amazon?
yeah, I think it's on Amazon. And I did have some experiences with some darker, shadowy life forms that didn't want humans to become godlike in our abilities
Right,
with this non-human consciousness, because we can,
right,
once you truly understand and believe it as human beings and as
right,
remote viewers like we are, we can go anywhere in time and space. You
right.
can access all kinds of information, and there are some beings out there that don't like and don't want us to all, as a human race, have that ability. At the same time, there were other life forms out there that encouraged me and taught me how to expand that and
Yeah,
do that better. So it's like it's like everything in life, isn't it? It has to be a yin yang balance
yeah,
of white and dark, good and bad. And I think it's the
right.
same with the non-physical elements out there as well within human ecosphere. It's always a trying to keep this balance of the yin yang.
And I think that, in the bigger picture, talks about those negative things that happen. I think it might be essential to have that positive and negative balance in things. You
Yeah,
need both, because you've encountered the people who are all love and light, nothing
yeah,
bad. It's all positive, and
yeah. It's not
no,
small. Yeah.
it's difficult. But then you have the people who are all dark. Oh, we're all
Yeah.
doomed, and the world's
Well, you
ending, and
can't.
it's
I think there's a famous quote in there. You can't. You if without the darkness, you can't see the light.
can't see the light. Right?
Yeah.
You can't appreciate it.
And I truly believe, and it was actually shown to me in some of the lessons I was taught, that everything is like the yin yang, but it's in a
Right?
moving yin yang that's shifting
Yeah.
back and forwards. So sometimes in your life and sometimes your experiences might have that little tinge of darkness to them.
Right.
But other times it can be shifted, and you can have experiences and parts of your life that are going to have really light spiritual experiences. But the
Yeah.
whole body and the whole universe is always fighting for this constant balance, but
Balance.
it never will be 100% light or 100% dark. It's just like a shifting balance that's always trying to reconcile itself.
Which I think is an important perspective to hold when we talk about all those scary things, these
Yeah.
abductions, these mutilations, that maybe it's just the universe is number one. I think it's teaching.
Yes.
Not everybody gets the lesson, but I think it's a teaching tool. If you don't look at it as an individual, you look at it as collectively, as our species, or as maybe we're all connected to a larger consciousness here
Yes.
that's really just trying to understand itself and its reality.
Yeah,
Then the
absolutely.
bad is a little bit easier to swallow if that's really what's going on. But when you come down to that up close, we call it like the street level, close
Yes.
contact, it's terrifying and it seems horrible.
It is. Yes. Yeah. You just have to try to keep that, the idea of balance in your head, and
Yeah.
and try to keep an eye on the positive sides more than the negative sides of life.
Yeah. Well, I think you're drawn to what you're focused on. You're drawn
Yes.
to your perceptions of things, because if you're looking for the bad, you're gonna, and I've been down
Yeah.
that rabbit hole a lot.
Me
That's
too.
all you
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
It's hard in this business,
Yes.
to keep that balance, not just that focus, but that
Absolutely.
balance,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the negative it's everywhere, but so is the positive. It's just
Yeah.
not as loud, really. That
It's always a fight. Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you think something like remote viewing can help? Let's start with people and even society in finding that balance, As
I mean, it's remote viewing is a great tool, as we know, for accessing anything. There
right,
don't seem to be any limitations to what we can do or where we can go. Um, but again, if you go into it with that negative slant, you're gonna pick up the negative slant. If you go into it with a positive mental attitude, you're gonna
Yeah.
get huge benefits from it. So it is affected by you in your life, in your thoughts, and your thought stream actually uh,
Uh-huh.
along the way. But generally, I think RV is a positive future benefit, and I think anyone on the planet can do it to
Right.
lesser and greater degrees of natural talent.
Right.
We can all make a use for it for in our everyday life. Just pure intuition, following that gut feeling, that kind of prickly sensation on the back of your neck.
Yeah. Any advice on how to strengthen that intuitive drive, how to deepen your connection to it, Des?
Yeah, there's several ways. I mean, one of the best ways is for everyone to take time for themselves to get to understand your internal kind of thought mechanisms and feelings of who you are as a person. And the best
Yeah.
way to do that, if I'm honest, is, and I know it sounds kooky, is in simple meditation. And it doesn't have to
Uh-huh.
be like any kind of religious or spiritual connotations to that. Just taking time to quieten your mind and to listen to your own thought process is an immense thing. As well as simple
Yeah.
things like just taking your shoes and socks off and walking on grass.
Yeah.
Having that connection to the planet, feeding the kind of like what's known as the chi energy move up
Yep.
through the planet and up through you. Just simple things like that really will help everyone immensely in their spiritual journeys.
Yeah. Quieting that noise, that chatter,
Yeah, there's
you
and
know.
the more technological we get as well, with these Zooms, our mobile phones, tablets, all that kind of stuff, the
Right.
more noise we have within our local space as well. And
Yeah.
I'm just as victim as everyone. I used to meditate before I used to go to sleep at night, just to drop myself
Right.
down into sleep. I got to be honest, most of the time now I just sit there watching TikTok videos before I drop to
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm as bad as everyone else. Even I need to take even more time. I have over the last few weeks, due to some illnesses, started taking a bit more time to myself and
Yeah.
reducing the stress. So we all have to be conscious of it, I think.
It's a commitment. It's a practice. I mean, I'm pretty consistent. I get up every morning and I spend about an hour doing yoga and then I meditate. And it makes all the difference. At night, I fall asleep. I try to meditate at night and
Yeah,
like I pass out, which is good, but when I'm trying to have a particular experience. So I think establishing that routine and
yeah,
making that this is just as important as going to work. This is just as important as exercising, as eating.
yes,
It's that much of a priority in my life, and it made
yeah,
a huge difference for me.
absolutely. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough to everyone. Really, we all don't do it enough.
And I think number one, there's so many apps out there that can help. Like, there's no shame in a guided meditation. A lot of people tell
No,
me, through my Reiki practice, I get people that say, "Well, I don't know how to meditate. And I'm so bad at meditating." I'm like, "Yes, so was I."
yeah,
It's not just closing your eyes and having no thought. Like Dad says, it could be walking in the grass and
yeah,
your only focus, you want to just keep your focus on the feeling of your feet on the grass, or
yes,
it's doing yoga and watching
yeah,
your breath come in and out. And over those types of mindful practices, you
yeah.
find that you can clear your mind better when you meditate over time.
Absolutely, yeah. And you just need 5 minutes for yourself. You could even do it in the
Yeah.
shower, feel the water dripping over you,
Yep.
think about your day ahead, instead of all the noise and you got meetings, paying the bills, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Get rid of all that. Just think about you, what you want to express. Just 5 minutes a day. We all need to do that more. And by doing that, you learn to know yourself better. And in knowing
Yep.
yourself better, you then understand your intuition more as well. There is
Right.
no real secret to being super psychic other than knowing yourself and the little thoughts and feelings
That's
and
it.
and inclemencies that come through you.
The psychic signals are so subtle. They're so
Yes.
subtle that our chattery mind easily dismisses them. And then our belief
Yeah.
system goes, nah, that can't be it. And the key is once you can get yourself into that state, learning to recognize that. And then you learn to recognize what's me and what's coming from somewhere else. And you can pick up
Yeah.
those signals, and then do something with
Absolutely.
it, make a decision based off of it.
It's just the signal is so subtle, and we probably all experienced this. Like if you ever had like a tiny little green fly or something walking over your arm, and you can feel
Uh-huh.
it walk over a couple of the hairs, and
Yeah.
you just feel a little hair on your arm twinge a little
Right.
bit, and you look down and you know there's like a little money spider or a little insect there,
Right.
That's how subtle the psychic signals are.
Yes.
It's like one of your hairs on your body just being twinged like this a little
That's
bit.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And learn your body and learn where your signals come in from, because right,
Yes.
we're all different. We all have different energy centers where things process. And then the psychic piece of that, Daz, I would say, would then be, you look at your arm and then you sit there and you study that fly,
Yeah.
right? That's what I think a good intuitive is doing. It's like most people go, oh, there's a fly there, and they brush it off. Where we look at that and we're able to zoom in and really
Yeah.
see, oh, that fly, look at the color on that fly, look at the wings on that fly, look what
Yeah.
he's doing.
And understand the
Yeah.
feeling of it as well. You really, really
Yeah.
understand how it feels where that hair is twitching,
Right.
and what that's doing to the rest of your body as well, as it's sending that kind of
Yes.
signal down through your spine, up through your central nervous system, and you get like that twinge on your neck. You're like, whoa, this feels a little bit tickly.
Yeah.
It's
That's
understanding
huge.
all that, how it impinges upon you. Yeah.
And seek feedback. I know when I was really starting to explore this stuff, I'd get a feeling or an impression. And usually if it was about someone else or an emotion, like I pick up emotions real easily. I used to ask people, people I was close with, hey, whoa, what's going on with you? What are you feeling right now? And you get more and more comfortable expressing those feelings as long as they're comfortable with it. And you're not going to go to a random person and say that you don't want to give them something traumatic. But that helps you understand that was my imagination. Nope, this was a psychic signal that was coming into me. And it strengthens your signal line, I think,
Yeah.
recognizing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some tips for,
That kind of thing is way better than taking any classes or reading any
yeah.
manuals. You don't need any of that. It's all everything you need to learn is within you, really.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, working with children, I've been an emotional support teacher for the last 15 years, so their emotions are really up and down, and just sitting there and watching their signals and watching my own impressions of it, and then having that dialogue and getting the immediate feedback has really helped. So, find ways in your everyday life to have encounters where you're monitoring your own intuitive practices and seeing
Yeah,
how
absolutely. Yeah.
the data that comes
I
in.
do mine through my creativity, like photography and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, talking to people and having that emotional kind of connection with them for just a few moments through my
Yeah.
photography. Yeah.
And you get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are you able to shut it down when you need to?
Pretty much, yeah, most of the time. Yeah. And I think that's a tool from learning remote viewing, really, that allowed me,
Yeah.
because it was like a no nonsense approach. It was like you're doing it for an hour. When you write end of session on your sheet of paper, that's
Right.
it. It's over with. So
Yeah.
getting into that and doing that kind of approach for nigh on 2-3 decades now, that's allowed me to do it with everything else. And I don't get an awful lot of spontaneous intuition happen to me, really, other than in my
Right.
dreams. I've almost atrophied my spontaneous intuition because
Yeah.
I'm so used to just like sitting down and turning it on and turning it off in an environment.
Which in your experience, in your world, which is better, the spontaneous or turning it on, turning it off?
Oh, the turning it on and off. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I am in total control.
Control of it.
Yeah,
It's tough.
when, how,
Yeah. It's like the sixth sense, right? The kid would just have these dead bodies showing up and it would freak him out. I was
yeah,
always afraid of the startle effect.
yeah,
I've noticed with remote viewing, I used to just be open all the time. And then when I learned remote viewing, I didn't get as much. I work in very emotionally charged
yeah,
environments every day, so I'm using it, but there's a lot of signals coming at me. It's hard, but for
yeah.
the most part, remote viewing is given that discipline to
Yeah, it has for me
shut
as
it
well.
off.
Yeah, the control to just switch it
Yeah,
on and off when I need it, rather than when it thinks it wants to do its play its tricks on you. Yeah.
which is important because there's so many signals coming your way. It
Yes.
can really drain you. It can
Yeah.
really take its toll on you. So I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's great advice. The grounding practices, the meditation, and then learning to, some kind of technique where you can just shut things down and
Yeah.
be in control of it will all lead to putting out that positive frequency and keep that,
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
balanced in the face of that negativity.
Yeah.
So, well, this is great, Daz. I know we started off negative and dark talking about that stuff, but I'm glad we ended up in that positive realm here.
It's all a balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
As well as the
Yeah.
dark, you got to have the light, and
Yeah,
just
I think this is a perfect balance of that. We did about half the show the negative, and
yeah,
that was
half dark
unintended.
show,
It was,
half light show.
yeah, that was pretty good. That was
But
pretty good.
I do truly believe, and this is what they told me many decades ago, is that every part of the universe, from above to below, is always in a constant state of flux of trying to achieve the
Yeah.
yin yang balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and when you think of that, you think about a harmonization frequencies. Who was it? Tesla said that. Think of everything in terms of frequency and vibration.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's exactly what we're dealing with. And
Yeah.
that's why when you're focused on the negative, you're putting out that frequency, you harmonize and it feels good going to that. I mean, when you get stuck on the fear porn, like you're getting dopamine. You're like, oh, and when you're focused on the positive, you're getting dopamine and that those
Yes.
positive releases, so it's where we focus. Well, any other thoughts, Dad? This has been a great discussion here.
No, no, that's awesome to talk about these kind of up and down subjects, really black and white subjects.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important to hold that focus and to be mindful of that and really of our own power and of and it's fun to explore the woo as well in terms of what's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
And
You
if
know,
people do catch themselves being, going to the dark side, being a little bit negative, catch yourself doing it and then,
right?
turn that around,
Yeah,
equalize that balance a little bit.
yeah, I agree. And I think finding a creative outlet, like you have your photography, me, I'm a writer. I channel that and I put it into that, and that helps me process it and then
Yes, me
step
too.
away from it. So whether you're an artist, a painter, a singer, whatever it is,
Yeah. A
you
lot of
know,
my photography is quite dark in its subject matter and in the way that I present it.
yeah,
But that's because, that allows me to then get rid of the darkness that I see and feel through my creativity in
yeah.
hope that the light achieves at the other end from it.
And I've been a part of spiritual practices where, they're finding these dark attachments to you or whatever. And what you do is you release it. You're not,
Yeah.
no ill will. You're just releasing it to the universe to go serve whatever purpose it needs to serve. And that's what your art does. You're taking it out of you, putting it
Yes.
into your art, and you're releasing it out there to be consumed in really a beautiful form in
Yes.
looking at it,
Yeah.
So, well, great points, Daz. A great discussion. I thank you for joining me and sharing,
It's been
some
great
of your
fun.
wisdom with everybody out there. To those of you watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts, on the dark stuff. What's going on with this planet? Where is this planet going? Are we being driven into evolution? Are we controlled? Is this some kind of prison planet, or do we have some kind of power in that? And this is all designed as one big giant school, and the bad stuff happens to help teach us and help us to grow. And then remember to stay grounded and
Yeah.
stay mindful. So, Daz, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I'm sure we've already got a list of topics we're going to get into in in the next
Absolutely.
upcoming podcast. To those of you watching, let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you have any ideas for things you'd like us to cover on the podcast as well. And we'll see if we can make it happen. So, again, thank you to Daz. Thank you to the Future Forecasting Group. I'm Dennis Nappy II. Thanks for watching.